guidance systems in place.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, good morning. Good Saturday morning. This is a really odd occurrence for TC. I don't do Saturday morning streams very often. So it's mostly because my guest is in high demand and he's all professional and stuff. You guys are going to think the last time I had somebody that came in a suit and tie, it was Mike Termat when we were talking to him about his campaign for presidential nomination for the Libertarian Party. I think, yeah, I think that's the last time. So I felt a little underdressed and underperforming already before the show even started. So anyway, you guys check out the merch. The books aren't for sale. Well, this book is for sale. My good friend Christy, who's launching her own show here, by the way, pretty soon. Her book is for sale, and I'll put the link in the show notes because if you buy her book and you can take a picture of you holding her book and send it to me, you get $5 credit to the merchandise over here. So got mugs, shot glasses. The coffee is bar none the best coffee you can get. And it's better than that other company that has black in their and a rifle in their name. So because I'm not woke and I haven't caved to the woke crowd by any stretch of the imagination. I think the further along I go, the less woke. I'm so not woke, I'm asleep again. But yeah, and if you guys would too as well, I did a stream in my car on the way home here back in the early part of December of 2022. And yes, Mike, it's because, yes. That's my buddy, Mike Skipper Arthur. He's my fellow host over at Right American Media and New Right Network for our show Veteran Nation. He's always got dad jokes, mostly bad jokes. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, Mike, and everybody else who's watching. Drop a hi in the chat so I know who's here. And if you're here because of my guest Brian O'Leary, thank you, and hit the subscribe button down there. I'd love to have more of you. And if you're a hate watcher, I was telling Brian, comment all you want, even thumbs down. The more interaction I get from even hate watchers, the more it drives me up in the algorithm. But and I'm all about algorithm chasing. But yeah, anyway, back in the early part of December, I have my good friends Bob and Sue. They went to the Defend the Guard event in St. Paul at the state capitol. They actually paid for my dinner to sit down and be able to have dinner with Scott Horton. That's how I got the signed copy of his book. Their son, Garrett, early in December, Bob is a Special Forces operator veteran, over 20 years in special operations. His wife, Sue, is also a vet. Their entire family, I think, except for one daughter, they're all have served in the military. But their son, Garrett, was also in the Army. He was a Ranger and saw some crap over in the war that he and his dad fought in together. That's a two generations. And I'm not talking dad was 30-something and son was, 18. Garrett wasn't born until after the war started. That's how long that god-awful war went on. And really, we're not fully done with it yet. But they both served in theaters of combat at the same time. Garrett got out of the Rangers, has been doing what a lot of people do when they get out of this conflict, and was kind of bouncing around trying to decide what he was going to do with himself. And one night, his PTSD was really getting to him. Something happened, and he ran out and threw himself in front of a truck. And he's recovering, but it's not going as well as it could. But they've got him to a point now where he's no longer intubated. He's off respirator, and they're trying to transport him back to Minnesota. And we're working on getting that done. But there's also a fundraiser for them to help provide for his care, because, the VA is a great organization and they take care of their soldiers so well. But what I would really like for you guys to do is, I'm going to put the link to their fundraiser up as soon as I can get it from Sue. And I'm going to be donating a portion of my stream proceeds and YouTube proceeds, Rumble proceeds, my Subscribestar proceeds. I'm going to be donating a portion of that to them at the end of April. So in any sales, so 15% of my sales of coffee or any of my other merchandise, no matter what it is, I don't care if I only sell 2 bags or if I sell 202 bags or 50 cases, whatever the case might be, or any of my merchandise, beanies included, all my Minnesota people or cold weather people, 15% of that will go to Bob and Sue at the end of April to help with the medical care and whatnot that's coming up for Garrett as he recovers. And he is a victim of the war. So some of you know I had John Ziegler on here a few weeks ago talking about his investigation into the Penn State debacle and the absolute fiasco that persecution of many of the people that were accused really went through. I would tell you that I believe, from listening to John's show, that it really kind of led to the declining health and death of Joe Paterno. I just don't see how anybody can go through that and hear the accusations that were made and in that kind of stress and be that age and not having it impact them. But somehow, because of that, Brian and I connected, and I started to listen to Brian's content, and I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty solid. And then I found out he started out as a sports podcast years ago, and I'm like, he's all right for a sports guy. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd love to have you on, have you talk about what you do, because he's working on helping other podcasters get started, and he does a lot of help with that. And that's something that has been missing in the podcast world. That's something that's been missing, whether it's audio only or it's video and audio or whatever the case might be, is there's a lot of protectionism that happens. Like, no, I'm not going to help anybody, because if I help somebody, it might impact my ability to grow. And when I got started, I wish there would have been other professionals who had been at it that I could have relied on. I had a lot of people help me, especially like my buddy Pirate Tomsky and my buddy Larry. Larry's upgraded my camera for me, bought me a new system to be able to run the new equipment. Tomsky bought this really nice mic. But there weren't a lot of people out there with the technical expertise to say, hey, here's what you need to do. And on top of being willing to help other people, he actually has a lot of really good viewpoints. He's almost a paleo conservative, and not the scary type that you read about on Wikipedia. He's thoughtful. It's weird. There are not a lot of thoughtful conservatives out there if you listen to mainstream media. So without any further ado, thanks for bearing with my long opening. Brian, thanks for showing me up on my own show already.
You bet, TC. It's my pleasure.
So you say that now.
So yeah, you mentioned a lot of things.
Yeah.
In the intro. So I don't know where you want to start.
I think we connected because of my interactions with Ziegler and his fan base.
Yeah.
How did you get connected with Ziegler?
It's kind of the deal with podcasting where like people ask you like how you found out about this podcast, and it's like Really, I don't know. I don't really know. It just kind of, I heard some guy, and then some guy turned me on to this other guy, and so on and so forth. And anyway, I think there was a podcast I listened to, and I really don't remember, but he was a guest. And he talked about this case at Penn State that had been, I don't know, this was probably, well, it's a couple years ago.
And, was it 2011 when that all kind of went down?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And so this was, I think, I don't know, my timeline gets screwed up in these last 3 years of the Rona madness, but
yeah,
but anyway,
it feels like it's been 10 years worth of 3 years.
So anyway, I had the sports podcast that you mentioned called Sportlanders the Podcast, and I was getting kind of sick of sports, to be honest with you, because of all the, like you mentioned, wokeness and stuff. But if you can see behind me, the folks that are watching online, I mean, I'm a big sports fan, huge.
Yeah.
But the problem,
I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah. But the problem is that all these leagues and everything, and the way they treated us, the general public and normal people in the last several years, is
hell, the way they treated some of their own people.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. And so I started the podcast kind of in the midst of Corona, like a couple months into it, where nobody was doing anything, and I was still working, but I had a lot of free time still, and then I figured, well, we're going to start the sports podcast that I'd been thinking of for about 5 years. Never did anything about it. But anyway,
what were you doing before you decided to start, before you gave up your income and did this for a living?
A bunch of other things that fruitless. Everything's fruitless in this life, but
okay, Solomon.
No, I was probably my favorite job I had for it's like 5 or 6 years I was a cab driver. And man, I got a bunch of stories out of that I don't know. People say I should write a book, but I don't know. But anyway, back to
you discovered Zig.
Yeah, I discovered him through a podcast, and then I'm like, all right, well, my lack of any other content I had, and this is actually sports related, and I considered myself a sports podcaster because I started a sports podcast. I didn't know much about podcasting, so like, can you come on? And he was very gracious with his time and availability. And rewind just a little bit. It was around Christmas, New Year's, that whole thing of whatever that, I guess 2021, 10 years after the fact, I listened to the entirety of his podcast called With the Benefit of Hindsight.
Yep.
And I don't know, I spent several days, if not weeks, with
I did the exact same thing.
It was an amazing thing. And it's just so sad that people have such an agenda to protect and not seek the truth. Like the narrative is bigger than the truth in this world. And anyway, so I wanted to dig into that with him, and expose. I have a relatively small audience, certainly compared to you and him, and a lot of the folks I follow. But if just my buddies from growing up can listen to this and say, whoa, what we thought forever is not even close to the truth. Not even close. And so I did that. And
well, I love John's hypothesis that it was a test run at the media feeding a narrative to the people and seeing how far they could get them to run with it in preparation for 2020. Yeah,
I agree to some degree. I don't think these people are impressive enough to be able to do that on a large scale. I mean, he often says that he's not a conspiracy guy, and I would, the way he defines it, I would agree. I mean, as far as myself, because human beings aren't at least in this day, aren't capable. I mean, conspiracy just generally is two or more people kind of combining to,
Right.
but anyway, like, but a mass conspiracy, no, there's a lot of ignorant people, like COVID. The whole COVID reaction was not a conspiracy. It was just a human react. I mean, maybe humans as a species are not as impressive as I once believed, but anyway, that's that's where I'm
Oh,
at.
yeah.
That's where I'm at with and so then I interacted with you. I saw he must have tweeted or something that he was on your show. I finally got to watch your show. Unfortunately, it wasn't the live stream like we're on now, but I got a chance to listen to your show, and it's just like the more he talks and the more interested people can ask good questions,
Mm-hmm.
the better we get at understanding the whole thing, even though if he said it several times, and then, you get your audience to
Yeah.
see what's going on. And I'm not even a Penn State fan. I actually like, I don't have any love for Penn State. I kind of like Joe Paterno, is the old guy, coach for all my life. But Penn State, nah, I mean, I got into some pretty good schools when I was out of high school, and Penn State rejected me because the only reason I applied there was of their football uniforms. I thought they were cool. And I didn't get in.
Were you planning on playing football, or you just
No,
like the uniform?
No, I
all
like
right.
the uniforms. And if I was going to go to school to be a college football fan, that was just, but that's pretty much most of the schools I applied to that had a good college football team or a presence of college football. So anyway.
I can honestly say I've never heard that as a reason to apply to a college. So, I'm always astounded
I
when
was 17, 18 years old. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that aren't,
every one of my guests almost always finds a way to shock me and say something that I'd never heard before. And right early on, here we are.
Yeah.
So you start to transition away from your sports focused show, and you kind of start to delve into what a lot of people, I mean, if you look around the podcastosphere, a lot of people that got started then. And, Clint Russell's a great example. I mean, Clint Russell kind of came out of nowhere, and I mean, that guy's content's exploded with Liberty Lockdown. And but he did the same thing. I mean, that was the whole focus of his show, was to talk about why he was opposed to the lockdowns. But it wasn't just coming from, just this hardcore libertarian perspective or a hardcore, Republican, Trump bot types. There were even people, that were kind of a little slightly left of center who were like, this is a massive violation of our liberties, who really, got involved and started to speak out. But you started to transition, what I've noticed with your content, and, maybe that was your goal all along, is as you're talking about things, you're not just talking about them from your own personal perspective in the sense of, well, here's why I'm against it. You actually kind of delve into the historicity of a lot of the characters you talk about. And mind-blowingly, recently and this had nothing to do with, the coup. We call COVID the coup on my channel because for some reason I've been able to avoid the algorithm when it comes to that too. Now I've said that, and I've said it enough times, I'll figure it out. But you brought up, in talking about liberty and freedom, you brought up Richard Milhouse Nixon and quoted extensively from his book and said, surprise, Nixon was actually very liberty oriented.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that was the conclusion I had. The writing, his words, all right?
His words, right, yeah.
His words shocked me as well when I read them.
Right.
If you go back to the podcast and listen to that, but his words, but also I got quite a reaction. I've talked to several people about this. Nixon? What are you doing with Nixon? And so I thought, it was President's Day, or I think it was President's Day when I picked up the book I'd had on my shelf for 2 decades that I'd never read. It was just like this nice hardcover book. And I'm like, I have a library of a bunch of stuff, and I have a whole section of like presidents, and pick them up every once in a while and read about them. But the more and more I get into it, more and more I hate everyone. But anyway, I picked it up and I started reading, and I'm like, whoa, like this is written in 1980, so 5 years after he resigned the presidency, and granted, the whole book, it's called The Real War. And he's talking about the specter of World War III is almost imminent back then with the Soviet Union and the West, essentially.
Right. We grew up under the shadow of that
Totally.
in a way that a lot of people that we would even have as viewers or listeners would never
Sure.
understand.
Yeah. And so I'm reading this, and I don't have it in front of me, but I was like, man, that I've never heard a president, and granted, he didn't say it when he was the president of the United States, but I'd never heard a president even talk or write this way.
Right.
Not even close. And but again,
It was
I'm
reminiscent of
looking at it-
Eisenhower's exit speech.
sure, a little bit, and George Washington a little
yeah.
bit, and but I mean, like we go from Washington to Nixon, or maybe a little Eisenhower in there to have somebody say something serious.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So it was again, you're looking at it at a lens 43 years after the fact that it was written, and there's no bipolar world anymore, right? There's no
Right.
communism versus the West. And that is the framework, like you said, that a lot of us grew up in. I mean,
I grew up 50 miles from Offutt Air Force Base, which was the home of the Strategic Air Command. Like we literally did drills. I don't know why. I don't know what we thought we were accomplishing. Hide under your desk.
Yeah, I don't remember doing that, but I remember my dad telling me that they had to do that in like the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, so it was like still the 50s and 60s. So
yeah, okay.
With all the drug problems of the 70s.
Yeah, okay.
So as you're kind of, going through your metamorphosis, coming out of your cocoon, your sports cocoon, and
Right.
blossoming into this beautiful chrysalis of a butterfly of social and political commentary. You've started to have multiple platforms now,
Yeah.
as far as getting your voice out. So tell us about the different shows you have, and then the endeavor that you're doing as well.
Sure. I would say that the kind of impetus to me starting to podcast again really stems from, I think it was about this last August, where I hadn't really podcasted since March. And, I was still in this frame of mind that I started a sports podcast. So I'm a sports podcaster, but I don't really, it's not moving the needle for me right now. And so since about a year ago, I've been involved in this program called the Tom Woods School of Life. And I know you're a fan of Tom Woods.
Love Tom's work.
And so I joined it. And sometime last summer, they started these entrepreneurship groups. So you meet once a week for an hour and a half with about 10 people in a small group, and people from all over the place. And I'm struggling. At this point, I'm doing internet or online marketing, email marketing, all this stuff. I kind of like really worked on my writing and copywriting and this, but I wasn't doing the podcast because I couldn't figure out how to make a sports podcast go, right? and so a couple of people in the group were like, dude, just go back to podcasting. You got the setup, and my setup was kind of like this, it's like I'm actually in my garage of all places, but I got, I got the microphone for podcasting. I got like a little background with part of my library. And
Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in my garage in Minnesota at all. You can tell that you're in warm climate.
well, yeah, if 35 degrees every morning is warm we're having a cold snap here in the Bay Area of California. It's terrible.
I go outside in shorts and a t-shirt when it's 35. What are you talking about?
Sure. Yeah.
But in the summer, if it drops down to 60, I'm like, man, it's cold. Shut the windows. So,
yeah.
So you got this group.
Yeah, it's group
in the school of life telling you stop complaining and just do it.
Just do it. And like what you can do is do like a YouTube or an Instagram or whatever it is for a minute.
You're not doing TikTok videos, are you?
I tried, dude. I just like, yeah. And it's just like the more formats I'm doing, it's like the worse I do, I think. So I've concentrated on podcasting because, I would say that in this group, they're like, yeah, just start podcasting again. And I'm like, okay, well, I just set up my camera and did it and my microphone and all that and put out an episode. And it was just essentially me reading an email that I'd written and just trying a new format. And so, well, hey guys, I did it. And they said, okay, what's your podcast about? And I said, I don't know. I don't know.
It's supposed to have a theme.
Right. And I said on the top of my, just off the top of my head, I said, I don't know what it's about, but my goal is eventually in the next year or so, roughly, I'm going to have 100 of you people on my show and we'll tailor the show to how that goes. And 100 of you people being members of the Tom Woods School. I've already got over a dozen. There's about, I think, 17 episodes published. I had a chance to do another interview with the aforementioned John Ziegler as part of that.
But have you landed the great Tom Woods yet?
Well, my goal is on episode 50, halfway through, we're going to get Tom on the show. That's my goal. He hasn't actually agreed to do it, but we'll see. I mean, once he sees that, he's got all these people within his school doing these great things. So anyway, yeah. And so my workflow was not good. I didn't really know how to do it. I just said, I'm going to do this podcast, right, with a bunch of people that I find interesting. And, it turns out that, I have now a big network within the Tom Woods School of people. But my thing was like, I'm going to do the show, schedule a time, cut the episode, release it. Well, things happen and schedules, don't quite overlap. And so like, I'm waiting to do these podcasts that I said I do. Eventually I just decided, two things. One, I decided that I'm going to change my workflow where we're just going to record episodes and then put them out as I get them done and just kind of do the audio. But the second thought I had is like, I need to do this more because one of the facilitators in the group, Barbara Williams, who actually had on my show, she said, she actually said, what do you like doing? I said, well, I really enjoy my email writing, but I actually kind of like the podcasting more. I said, do that more. Okay. So I started doing a show every day, Monday through Friday. And it's 10 to 30 minutes of me just talking. Really, again, what's the show about? Well, it's me talking about whatever I find interesting that day, or that has been interesting to me forever. And I finally get a chance to talk about it. So. Which
is really my show is just me finding whatever is interesting to complain about in the state of Minnesota. Well, around, United States right now. I don't complain. I don't complain a lot, but a little occasionally. The thing that really struck me about your content when I dug into it was there's clearly a love and a passion for the values of this nation. And I want to say this. We are anybody who, and you're kind of a Buchananite based off of our conversation.
Pat Buchanan, yeah. He's my hero.
Who is really, he's kind of the quintessential every guy's voice of conservatism, like, but not the neoconservative or even the kind of the normie con conservative values. He's kind of the everyman's voice of William Buckley.
Uh,
Well, well, I know he's your hero, but Buckley is he's often this, like patches on his elbows and his corduroy, suit tops and stuff. But Buchanan reaches across a wide spectrum of people and says things that, even people who are left-leaning centrist and left of center types really go, yeah, his values are traditionally American without being reactionary, without being
Mhm.
sold on the idea of a, just pure American greatness just because we're America.
Right.
And I think that's what was the appeal when you listen to him speak. That was the appeal to so many people.
There's a whole philosophy undergirding whatever he says,
Right. Absolutely.
tradition and
Do you see him more of as a offshoot of like a Burnham or?
I don't know much Burnham. I've only really gotten a little bit into him over the last few years, but I don't. He's his own thing. I mean, he was influenced by the aforementioned William F. Buckley in his early days when National Review was really the only kind of conservative, if you will.
Back before it went weird.
Oh man.
But
so, yeah,
go ahead.
He's really kind of. I don't know if you know who Russell Kirk is.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah.
Well, I don't know him, but I know.
Well, I don't know if many of the listeners would know who he is, but like that's kind of the strain of conservatism that he comes down on. And frankly, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, actually with Tom Woods and Paul Gottfried, who's another like intellectual hero of mine, and they were talking about this whole they call it paleoconservatism.
Mm-hmm.
Gottfried just came out with a collation of essays where he was the editor, I believe, of all these, and there's a strain of thought that goes from what we now call paleoconservatism and paleo-libertarianism, which I'm kind of like in both camps.
It's me.
Yeah. Because I'm a huge fan of Lou Rockwell, and actually Lou published a piece of mine back in I think it was September that really kind of launched me into like thinking, oh, I got something, I had something to say, but now I really feel like I'm comfortable saying it. And I on my Substack page one morning I submitted the article a few days prior, and I was like, let's see if Lou wants to publish this. And I woke up one morning and my email was like chock full of like new subscription. I'm like, what in the world happened? What did I do? I didn't like, and it was Lou put it on the front page, and then a bunch of people went to my Substack, and I was like, okay, well now maybe I'm a little more comfortable. And that was only a few months ago, really. So I didn't feel better about saying what I thought.
Isn't that funny? You say what you think, and then you got to wonder if people are gonna hold it against you in this world today.
Well, and if they do, I don't care. I'm cut to the point where I don't care.
Yeah. Oh yeah, trust me. After everything I've been through with the launch of this show, or and all of its iterations now with the. I do a TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, which was really where I wanted to bring you on, but you've got kids and a life, so I don't can't be bothered to that's all tongue in cheek because I know what it's like to have kids and a life. So just for those of you that are listening, you can find Brian's Substack at briandoleary.substack.com, and it is in a banner down here, and it's also in the description of the video. So I would strongly encourage you to go over there and check that out. And take a look at what he has to say. Uh, you have really kind of started to talk, and I've noted this, and I don't know how long that's been going on, but you're not afraid to push the envelope on some things. And one of our interactions here this last week was we interacted a little bit on Lincoln. And before I go too far into discussing that, I'm going to ask the question: how much have you commented in general conversation or in any of your content? How have you commented on Lincoln and the normal perception of Lincoln? And what do you think the average American's perception of Lincoln is?
Well, let me take the second part first.
Absolutely.
The average American, not to speak for them, but from my impression, is that Lincoln is a hero who freed the slaves and saved the Union. I think the historical record, on the other hand, is he
Just
did
say it. It's fine.
He did not free the slaves.
Correct.
It was not until after he died that slaves in the United States were free. And frankly, and then he didn't save the Union. He kind of torpedoed it to a large degree. And I don't believe he's a hero. He was a railroad lawyer, and back in those days, that was like one of the worst things you could be. But anyway,
it was the ambulance. It was ambulance chasing for
I mean, he just enriched himself with it's just, he's not an impressive guy. I think maybe because he was assassinated in the time of war, the legend built, and granted, it was I don't even call it a civil war, really. It
wasn't
a second American Revolution to some degree. And, of course it's super brave to be against slavery today, but most of the people that are against slavery today wouldn't have even opened their mouth back then. That's how cowardly.
North or south.
No. Oh yeah. North or south.
North or south. Yeah.
I mean, honestly. Yeah. And anyway, so yeah, of course we're against slavery. That it's just goes without saying. But anyway,
except you have to say it.
Yeah, right.
It's like it goes without saying, except you can't. You can't not say it. And that's the kicker, is that and that's what really, I mean, I had already started to pay attention to your stuff, but when you interacted, I never know what I'm going to get. It's the Forrest Gumpery of American history, is commenting on Abraham Lincoln and the American
and
Civil War. You literally don't know what the responses are going to be.
I'm not one of these guys who will just tear down Lincoln for no reason. But
right.
I do think that he's honestly, if you look at the record, in the bottom 5 of American presidents, not on the top 4 like Mount Rushmore has.
Right.
So, but the funny thing is, it's the propaganda too, that, I grew up in Southwest Portland. Our 2 high schools, by the time we had 3 at one point, and then the public high schools, government high schools, were Woodrow Wilson High School and Abraham Lincoln High School. And those are honestly, you start reading history, those are 2 of the bottom 5 presidents of all time, of what they did to the nation and the culture and everything. But anyway, getting back to
Nate,
earlier,
try to get people to name one thing policy wise or economically at all that Lincoln did outside of be president during that conflict, and at all, how do I want to say this, that wasn't him overreaching and taking to the executive branch powers it didn't have. There's nothing. He did nothing outside of the Civil War. Nothing.
It ultimately changed the nation in a way that it was another revolution, but the side that was trying to not be a revolutionary, they were just trying to split right? The South wanted to go essentially peaceful. They weren't invading the North, but they wanted to go peacefully, and you can't do it. And it's like today with the topic of national divorce. It's
Right.
like, no, you can't go. You
Right.
can't go. You have to stay here. It's like, why? You hate me anyway. Why do you want me here? You
Right.
know? And I don't, I talked about it last week a little bit, and I was like, it doesn't have to go with territory. We have there's been a secession of the heart for many Americans. And it's like, I don't want to be associated with you, Biden groupies or
Or I don't want to be associated with most Trump groupies. So.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. That's a secession of the heart too.
Yeah.
And, well, getting back to what the first part of that question.
Thanks for remembering. I went.
Yeah.
On.
No, it's fine. But you asked if I talk about it a lot, and it's like, no, not really. Because it's like it's like a historical subject that most people haven't read about.
They're just not versed enough in history to understand. Yeah.
And they will, repeat what they've heard in third grade about how great Lincoln was and how, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree and this, that, and the other. And it's like, largely myth. And, but it's a cultural myth that holds today. And it's one of those things that, you can't really change many people's mind. But I'll tell you one thing, that I was at a book signing a number of years back with, I'll just
Go ahead.
name the author. It was Richard Ford, who's a novelist, and he's one of my favorite novelists. And I've gotten most, if not all, his books and read them. And he's an interesting guy, born in Mississippi. And I think lived across the street from Eudora Welty, the author, and he he went to college at Michigan State, of all places. And, so he was this guy, he's nominally on the cultural left, but he's got some great novels that I really like. The Sports Writer being the first one I read about him, by him. But I went to a book signing, and somebody right in front of me was asking this question about Lincoln, because he knew that he had that Ford had some sympathies, he not anti-Southern, because he's definitely a Southern man. But he was like really, he doesn't embrace the Southern history and Southern culture like my relatives maybe in Middle Tennessee might. Yeah. But anyway, so this guy asked him some question about Lincoln, and he's like, actually, in a very soft spoken way, very polite and very
Southern
nice
gentleman. Yeah.
He's like, actually, the more you read about Lincoln, the more you won't like him. Signed the book, and the guy just like, I saw his jaw drop. He wanted to like go, yeah, high five, like Abraham Lincoln. But anyway, so that really, that was a kind of seminal moment in this whole thing where I was like, holy cow, people actually with an open mind will think different things, even though like culturally they're supposed to repeat. The
heck you say, open mind. One of the viewers said, thoughts on Lincoln: tall and poor situational awareness in a theater.
That's right.
It's not untrue.
That's my friend Adam Heyman.
Adam, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
Any friend of Brian's is crazy to be over here. No, I'm thanks for stopping by. Now go over there and hit my subscribe button, because somehow I've already lost a viewer. So I'm gonna lay that on your doorstep, O'Leary. That's what I'm gonna do.
So I was going to say, not only is he my friend, he's a fellow podcast host, and I think in the show notes this is my first publicly announcing the fact that Adam and I are going to.
I wish I had an effects board. We'd do a drum roll.
Yeah, on a podcast, and we hope to launch it probably end of March, early April, and we've already recorded several episodes. And so anyway, yeah, it's going to be like our show is, we essentially decided we're have about 4 pillars, and they're political philosophy, economics, history, and kind of the meta concepts and structures of human civilization. And we're going to, we haven't really decided on the length. It's going to be like a half hour to an hour, probably once or twice a week. And so we're looking forward to doing that.
I do need to, since you brought up philosophy, world history, and meta concepts, my co-host of Veteran Nation, I don't know if Skipper is still here. Skipper's a Marine vet, so Skipper will have that when they launch their show. We'll have somebody do CGI cartoons for you, so you can understand what they're talking about.
There you go.
I will not hear the end of that one later. No, Skipper's actually a sharp dude. He's out in California where you are as well, except he's further south, and then he's out in the desert. Isn't all of California a desert?
A lot of it,
in some way, shape, or form.
I'm right up against the mountains, and we had just a huge snow dump, like over a foot yesterday. Like,
yeah, I was gonna
5 miles from where I live, and we just got rain. But then on the other side of the mountains is Santa Cruz, and their beach was covered with snow, like first time in decades.
How far south are you?
I'm just right in the Bay Area, right outside of San Jose.
So that puts you about
halfway down.
So you're south of Oakland and San Francisco, but north of LA.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
where it's still relatively speaking,
Silicon Valley is what they call
still
it.
warmer than what we're used to. I was going to ask if you guys got the impending doom of the blizzard that I kept reading about.
No, but the crazy thing is, man, that I've lived here for 7 years probably now, and the California weather, it's like normally pretty pleasant in the wintertime. We've had like 2 of those days since Halloween. It's been like the biggest cold snap, and even people in Southern California are freaking out because it's so cold. And
here comes the climate lockdowns, folks.
And it's just crazy. Like, it's cold. Like every morning I come into my office, so-called my garage, and you know how garages go. That's why you're not in your garage. It's
well, that and it's a mess.
Yeah,
so.
It's cold. It's like, I'm dealing with like 30, 40 degree temperatures for the good portion of the day, and the opposite is the case in the summertime. I have to do all my work basically from the early morning or the very late evening after everybody goes to sleep, because it's sweltering in here. Yeah. So
you don't have like a little portable air conditioner you can pop into your office?
Fans and stuff like that. But then if I'm doing a podcast or whatever, it's super loud.
Yeah. And I have my space heater on, and fortunately it's relatively quiet, but I use the noise dampening effect here in the StreamYard studio, which helps. I want my Minnesota friends that are watching, Sarah, who was, and then my friend Sue, who I mentioned, her and her husband there at the beginning of the show, and their son Garrett. Sue, she says, morning. Did you guys hear that he thinks that 35 is terribly cold? I just want to throw that out there. And another one of your fans is here. She must be Sally. Says Brian is great. Either that or Sally's a fan of mine.
My beautiful mother.
There you go. That explains it. I was gonna say either it's a fan of mine that I don't know yet, who already appreciates you more than me, which is normally I get these comments. Hey, thanks for plugging me into that person. I'm going to listen to them a lot more. I'm like, interesting. What did I do there? Oh, my buddy Katie. My buddy Katie is here. Anyway, he says we're chopped liver. That's chopped liver. Don't forget chopped liver. So I know you got to take a little bit of a break here coming up. And I think what we'll do when we do take that break, I think we can both take a break, and I'll I'll put a standby screen up so that everybody who's watching can, run and, get coffee or hot chocolate or use the restroom or whatever they're going to do. And how long do you need to break for?
5 minutes.
All right. Yeah, that's perfect. I'll top off my coffee at that point. I've never done that in the middle of a show, but I have a screen for it. So I am prepared for all things.
Yeah, I used to do a live stream about this time every Saturday morning, actually, during the college football season. And this was actually last fall. I one night, the night before college football season started, or it was actually week 1. They have games on week 0, that so-called, but all the main shows, or most of the games start week 1. And like, it was Friday night. I'm like, I need to kind of put out more content.
So you just did a stream.
I did a live stream. I learned like on my phone, like learn how to set up a live stream, woke up at 3 a.m, set everything up, and then boom, I was online. But and I did it. So I did that for 8 or 9 weeks, probably September through October, because I gave myself, at least mentally, and I think I started announcing it on the show. There's like, if this is making my life worse, not waking up, I don't mind that, but just concentrating on college football when I'm having a hard time getting back into it after what they did to us after a few years. And if it's making it worse for me, I'm going to stop doing it, but I'm going to do it just for the discipline, because I love college football and I've loved college football all my life. It's just the fact that today, or, nowadays, it's dead or dying anyway. It's a dying institution, dying sport, and it's sad. And that goes with a lot of sports. I'm a huge baseball fan, and that I just see yesterday they started spring training games and the new rules of the pitch clock and all this stuff. It's just like, it's kind of a
wait a minute. I don't even know that much about baseball, but they're putting a pitch clock on now.
Yeah. If you have, there's two, it's like the NFL with their play clock. There's two different ones. So if there's a runner on base, the pitch clock is, I can't even remember how many seconds. And then they've been doing it in minor league baseball for a few years now. And, if there's nobody on base, then you have so many seconds to deliver the ball. And then if the batter is up there horsing around with his batting gloves and knocking dirt off, and stepping out of the box, he can get an automatic strike called on him. And they tried doing this. I remember when I was in high school, one of my buddies, my first game of the year, this is kind of off topic, but one of my buddies, they tried to enforce this. And he's got like a 3-0 count or 3-1 count. And he steps out. He does all the things with the batting gloves, step out, boom, boom, and then gets back in ready to hit. He got called strike 2 just because he stepped out of the box. And then he's like, looked at the umpire and stepped out of the box to look at the umpire. He's like, boom, strike 3. And then that's how it's going to go now. I've been seeing clips in college baseball.
I don't know that that's off topic. I really don't know that that's off topic, considering we've been, I know we've been a little all over the board, but, when we come back, we'll start to dive more into the philosophy of politics and culture a little bit more. But I don't know that it's completely off topic, because what you're seeing in sports is a conditioning to compliance. Mm-hmm. And you have to have rules. I mean, society, if you talk to like anarcho-capitalists, mm-hmm. people who are philosophically anarchists, not how do I want to say this?
Not the people in downtown Portland throwing bricks through windows.
Right. Those aren't anarchists. Those are authoritarians. They are literally the fascist. So they don't want anarchy. They want full control. They just want to be the ones in control. Mm-hmm. But in society, without this weird, radical, violent version of anarchism that people have in their minds, you have to have some semblance of rules. The problem is that they condition us to an overabundance of rules and regulations by what they put on us, and it starts with things we enjoy, whether we're taking part in a sporting activity or actually watching a sporting activity, or even TV. There's there's just this look at, like, I complain about ads on my own videos when I watch back my streams, which I don't do very often, but I'll complain about it because I want this instant gratification of being able to watch something or listen to things, but they just keep adding and adding and adding stuff on. And what it gears us towards is this idea of pure control.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be this pure control. And
Yeah, it's the top-down structure.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what Sue says, and Sue's a sharp gal, even though she was married to a special operations guy. If they want to keep bread and circuses working well, they have to stop messing with the bread and circuses. And but that's part of it, is that they're entertaining us. And sports are really kind of today the closest we're going to get to the Colosseum of Rome.
Pretty much, yeah. Christians versus Lions.
Yeah.
Not so much, but yeah.
No, but but that's what they did when they wanted people under control, when they wanted to keep the people from realizing what was going on in society and culture.
Mhm.
They
Sure.
threw sporting events at them. The
Mhm.
Colosseum wasn't always, Christians being killed by gladiators.
Chariot races and so
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
And that's how they got people to accept this event over what was going on out here in the greater Roman world. Do you want to take our break now and come back? Or
Sure. Yeah, it's fine.
did you need to wait an exact 15?
No.
All right.
Yeah, we're
Then,
good.
yeah, we'll
I'll
do.
be. I'll be right back. Just
All right.
take care.
All right, guys, we're going to take a bit of a break. You guys want to run and use a restroom or grab coffee, or, Kevin, you probably are grabbing bourbon for Harmony Spirits this time of day. We'll be right back. Hey, we are back. Thanks for sticking with us. Are you all squared away?
We're all squared away. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I've never done that in the middle of the stream. I might do that more often. Except
Mm.
now I need to find some people who want to run ads on my show, and I can just set
There
up
you
a whole. And so, if there's anybody out there that's looking to run ads or sponsor somebody, I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
So, since I went on my little diatribe about what sports is all about here,
Mm.
and so your new show coming up, and it's not gonna. I mean, it's gonna be different in that it's focused
Yeah.
more intently, and you're gonna have a co-host with
Mhm.
you, and that was your buddy Adam.
Yeah, and he's a sharp guy. He's actually on the executive committee of the Libertarian Party of Nevada, and actually hosts or co-hosts a podcast called the Battleborn Podcast.
Oh,
Which is it's a pretty good show. They kind of rebooted it last year. So I don't know how familiar you are with libertarian politics, and just kind of being in the sphere.
I move in certain circles.
Yeah, Tom Woods and Dave Smith and those guys.
I have an entire series on the
Yeah.
show that's called Libertarian Lowdown, where I interview libertarians from. I've had Monica Perez on, I've had Spike Cohen on, and others. So
yeah, I was going to say. By the way, you tweeted out something yesterday about must follows or must listens on Twitter, and you included me with the likes of Tom Woods and Dave Smith and John Ziegler and Scott Horton. I'm like, holy cow, man!
I meant it. So.
Yeah, this is good company. But
so anyway. and Adam, reach out to me if you're on Twitter. I would love to have you and like to have you on for Libertarian Lowdown sometime to talk about your show. So now I've got somebody else to check out and see if they're going to make it into my must listen list there. And I meant it. I meant what I said yesterday. I do not name drop these people because I'm clout chasing.
Yeah.
If I plug my audience into people like you and Clint and Dave and Scott, and I mean the closest I've ever been to fanboying was when I got to meet Scott, and that was an amazing moment in my life, but mostly because Scott made me realize I wasn't insane.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was, I cut my teeth on traditional American values. I went through a very brief, hell no, we won't glow, peacenik kind of perspective when I was in high school, and that didn't last very long. Americanism had been, beat into me. Well, not physically, but just in, philosophically. I had uncles that were vets. My dad would have been a vet, but his, he couldn't serve even during Vietnam because the trigger finger on his right hand got cut off, and so they wouldn't take him into the military during Vietnam. They wouldn't even draft him for that. But my grandfather was a World War II vet, and so the idea of being, pro America, pro military, back these, conflicts and whatnot. And the more I got involved and was watching, the more supportive I became of the military, especially with vets, and the less supportive I was of war. And I was all on board with the Patriot Act, right?
Okay.
Oh, I was like, after 9/11, I mean, I knew who was the face of 9/11. The day it happened, I was a senior line chef at TGI Fridays in 2001 in Rochester, Minnesota, and like everything came to a standstill. Rochester shut down because everybody was convinced that the Mayo Clinic was a target.
Oh, I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
We were a major target at that point in everybody's mind. I mean, they were shutting down the malls. The Mayo Clinic was going into, for lack of better terminology, like standby mode. They were waiting for it to happen, and the restaurant was just dead silent, and everybody was gathered around the TVs in the bar just watching, and I was looking at everybody around me, and I said, this is Osama bin Laden's fingerprints all over it.
Mm-hmm.
And the wave of patriotism that kind of united the country at that time, to me, was awe-inspiring.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember.
And I was like, I can't, we've got to retaliate. And then the Patriot Act came along, and I was like, wow, this is, we've got to have a way of managing our enemies,
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched, and I was like, even that shortly afterwards, I started to kind of go, this is unsettling, and not because of terrorism, but they've got a lot of power. And all of a sudden the TSA comes around, and
Gosh, Kibby, yeah, that.
And I was like, who are we? How is this? But this isn't doing, how, just, I couldn't ever finish the thought because I wasn't connecting.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things. When you're talking about that, it reminds me of, like, I get so angry about things that are just so insane, and like I can't figure out a way to articulate it. But I guess, getting back to kind of what I do is that I'm be able to formulate these thoughts a bit better the more I actually talk, as opposed to talk in my head. And
Right.
it's just a way to get it out and, talk to good people about all these things.
Well, it's my buddy KD's watching. He's my sounding board quite a bit. I tell him why he's wrong, and then he takes it very well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wait. He's going to make some sort of smart aleck comment. So, no, but he and I have some really great conversations. And what Horton did for me was, I kind of stumbled across him by accident. Woods talks an awful lot about the Soho Forum.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Dave Smith and Bernstein, they talk about Soho Forum on occasion. And I started looking up Soho Forum, and I stumbled across Horton's debate with Bill Kristol.
Yeah, like a few months ago or last year. Yeah,
it was last year or whatever. Well, it's even longer than that now. It's probably almost 2 years ago that took place.
He smoked Kristol. Kristol didn't take it seriously, and he just got ruined.
Oh, smoke is like a that's generous. He picked Bill Kristol up by the feet, mopped the floor with him, wrung him out, mopped the entire building with him, put him back in the bucket, and left him there wet. Is what he did.
He couldn't care less. It's like it's just one of those things. He came and, like,
who is this taxi driver, this cab driver?
Yeah, right.
To debate me. Don't you know who I am?
Yeah,
it was really how it came off, and I was like, wow, I'm not insane. This stuff is all, it's all predicated on control.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look around and you watch now, and I'll launch into this then for current events and philosophy.
Sure.
When you watch the narrative with Ukraine and Russia, it is abundantly clear that there is one party in the United States, and that is the war party. That's because these traditionally anti-war, anti-conflict, anti-American interventionism, anti-American imperialism types are beating the war drum in lockstep with the neoconservative military-industrial complex.
I would actually probably push back on that a bit, because I think that was only the case in the Vietnam era.
I agree with you on that. What I'm saying is in our lifetime, the side that we've always kind of pictured being the anti-war, anti-interventionist types have always been on the left.
Sure. Yeah, but that's only in our short
right in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is all that matters, is what's happened in my life. Brian. What do you think?
But yeah, you look at it.
History doesn't matter.
You look at it in historical perspective, and the Mr. Republican, Robert Taft. He was the one saying, no, we don't need to be being global crusaders for whatever supposed justice and whatever. Now, it's like we need to defend our home,
Right.
And that's really kind of the origin of the United States as a polity, I guess, is that, what was it? John Quincy. Well, I said another president that maybe had something good to say, even though I don't like much of what he said. John Quincy Adams said, we don't need to go abroad looking for monsters to destroy, or something to that effect. And it's true. Like, we don't. Why? I think I don't know if I podcasted about it. I definitely thought about it, but we don't need to be this global hegemon exporting quote unquote US values or American values on the rest of the world. And I think it stemmed from that whole Lincoln thing that Nixon thing that you mentioned earlier, where we want to export liberty, but liberty has nothing to do specifically by any means with the form of government, democracy in particular, because the whole idea of this US democracy has gotten so twisted and corrupted over the years. It's like one man, one vote. Well, it's not even today, it's not even really one man, one vote.
Right.
But what the Constitution promised was Republican form of government, and not that's small r, of course.
Right.
Where your communities come together and then voice an opinion. And now it's like you just get enough people voting on one side or the other, and a Democrat wins or a Republican wins, and that's no good. It's really no good. I would probably argue that Republicans, by and large, are a bit better, certainly in local elections, but on a national scale, we've seen the destruction that they've wrought also. So, and certainly in Congress and Senate, and
right. Well, to the point now where you look at the crew that the Liberty Caucus and how they have stood up against the mainstream normie-con version of republicanism at the federal state level, and the browbeating and the crap storm that they faced for not playing politics in the sense of doing what they were supposed to do, which was to back whoever they were told to back, when they push against it. And you look at, MTGs now just come under a massive firestorm of critique, and
she
over saying something about a peaceful divorce, and people have turned her into a monster. There's your monster to destroy, right? There's MTG. Destroy MTG because she dared say we might need to start talking about a peaceful divorce.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Tom Woods briefly earlier, and he's got a free ebook out there at I think it's naturaldivorce.com. You can just go and find that there. And he it's a short ebook, but he kind of breaks it down, like what everything possibly could look like. And I'm an advocate of, like I said earlier, of some, I don't even know if would be necessarily called divorce, but like, again, it's secession of the heart. I don't want to be in a polity with people who hate me. And
well, especially when they're in the centers of power.
And I don't really have like ideas that are particularly strange or controversial in the fact that, if you're on the other side of what I think, that's controversy. But they're pretty measured, and everything I say or do is like pretty measured and reasonable, I think. And so I don't see myself as a firebrand of sorts. And actually, when I was talked about my kind of origin story in podcasting, and I was a sports podcaster, and I didn't want to be like the AM radio drive time talk radio guy, because that doesn't appeal to me.
Right.
Because one of my guy I got to know through this actually, like you get to know a lot of people throughout the entire country or world that you wouldn't otherwise know in today's
I have
internet.
no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'll just give a shout out to his name is Chad Collier, and he runs Papa C Pies in right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in Brentwood. And
Why does that sound really good?
oh, I don't buy any other pies. I mail order if I get pies. I mail order from Chad. But so I've been doing that, and I was like, well, you want to come on the podcast and talk sports and pie? Because I don't know how we even again, I don't even know how we stumbled on like buying pies from him, but we were having a chat, and he was saying, well, maybe you could be like the next Clay Travis, you talk politics and sports. It's like, I kind of like some of the things Clay Travis says, read a couple of his books, but I don't want to be that type of personality. I'm a different guy. And I don't, he's got obviously a much bigger reach. I mean, he took over, I think, the time slot from Rush Limbaugh, if I recall. But like, I don't go out wanting to be that kind of guy. I mean, I would like to talk sports, and I don't even really like to talk politics. Politics is entertaining to me. But
see, that's like, when I launched my channel, I didn't start out to be purely dissident to be dissident. I started out, you go back to the foundation of the channels, April 25th, it was a Saturday of 2020. And it was after, over a month of 2 weeks,
15 days to be really,
yeah.
It was you flattened the curve already in those 15.
Yeah, we flattened the curve, and then we flattened everything else. So it was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki of virus responses, is what it was. Overkill to the max. Boy, I'm gonna lose some people on that one. But I went out to just go capture man on the street interviews at a protest. Keep in mind, at the time, I'm a deputy in the third largest metro area, county area in the state of Minnesota, working on the detention end, but still a sworn deputy. But I was really unsettled by what I was seeing take place in my home state. And so I just went out to go talk to people. I didn't go out to be a dissonant voice. What made me dissident wasn't what I was saying. It was what was being said in public. Everything that I've said from well before 2020, well before the launch of my channel, my platform, well before, was normative in the sense of liberty loving, constitutionally respectful, republic loyal positions. The only thing that has changed for me in that dissident, talking about this in this dissident perspective, has been the shift, and not a rapid shift, but an overwhelmingly massive collapse of the ability of the American people to recognize how fast they took power. And by them, I mean the regimist types, how fast they took power and have been unwilling to relinquish it. I mean, you live in the land of King Gavin. That guy still
amazing. He
has executive orders.
He's a cockroach, man. He survived a recall election and then got voted in, not by a landslide.
I think the most profound thing I've heard you say since the time we've connected was, he's a cockroach. I mean, that's apt.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't win by as big as a landslide as DeSantis did in Florida, but on the other end, he also ran against a feckless Republican within a feckless Republican Party in California that didn't even put up a contest against him. They just put up a candidate. They didn't put any money behind him, but like thinking that, oh my gosh, like Newsom's gonna hang himself. No. There's too many just bizarre people around here. And, I think the biggest problem kind of with the institutional cultural left is that everything about what they do is based on emotion. It's not rationality. It's not, principles. It's emotion.
Right.
And I get it.
It's pure emotion, devoid of intellect.
It's human nature to be that way, but just step back a little bit and look what you're doing to not only the current state of things and the future. And you know, well, I mean, it's a long, hard slog to get through, but I just think that the culture is devolving, and one of my taglines for my show is serious content amidst an unserious culture. And that's something I really believe, that we're in an unserious culture. People aren't willing to address things. They'd rather just be ostriches and put their head in the sand and go on and like this didn't happen, or put pillows around their ears. Like this isn't happening to me. I'm like, well, you're not 5. I know what a 5-year-old does. Yeah, they throw, they don't want to listen. They yell and scream and run around the house. But we're not, as grown humans, we're better than that. We should be better than that anyway. Well,
my buddy KD and I have this conversation on a pretty regular basis, and there's a lot about what he says in regard to what you're saying about emotion that is right. The thing that I think differentiates the left, which operate purely off of an emotional drive, it feels good to be against this. It feels good to be, for that, which is the entire drive of social justice. It's why they have to have that qualifier before justice. It has to say social, but it's a good feeling. It has created.
It's like this woke mindset. You're on the right side because all these other people are now
agreeing with you.
Like the domino effect of like, yeah, we're on the right side. But like, are you really? What?
Right. And it feels good. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is how it makes me feel, because all of these people come out in support of my position. And so there is this emotional drive, which I say it's emotional drive devoid of intellect. But I also think, and this is what I've told KD,
largely. I mean, give some people some credit, but
right. Is that we also then can see on the other side of the spectrum a completely detached intellect from emotion, where there is no emotional response at all to what we're observing, which can be just as dangerous when you have a purely intellectual response to something that can lead to severe problems, in that it takes away the empathy aspect, and you can have an incredibly hard time then when you completely detach the emotion or the empathy from the intellect. You have two sides that are going to end up in the same place. You're going to have an emotional tyranny, or you're going to have an intellectual tyranny.
Yeah.
And those are both very dangerous.
Intellectual to any degree. I mean,
when I say intellectual, I mean just strictly based off of this is what I think, and therefore I think it, therefore it is right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to have the empathy, you have to have the emotion to retard in the sense of slow down an overly intellectual response to something where it's strictly, I think this, therefore it is. Yeah. Well, Katie says social bipolarism. Yeah, really. Yeah. And you had mentioned that earlier, the kind of the bipolar mentality of left versus right.
No, I mentioned the bipolar world insofar as you got the Soviet Union here,
right?
And the West led by America over here, and the global politics is totally different anymore than it was back then. I mean, it all ended in 1991, really, when the Soviet Union crumbled.
We had no enemy to fight anymore.
We had no enemy, but that's the way. So, I mean, I think I mentioned it last week or the week before on my show. I said that is these people haven't even thought about anything different since then. Anyway, for like our foreign policy establishment, they're looking for enemies to fight.
Right. Absolutely.
Go out and fight because, and now it's Russia. It's like, well, no, Russia should Russia proper should probably be on the traditionalist American side, because that's a pretty traditional nation under the whole kind of once you rip the skin of communism off of it, it's a relatively traditional populace. They've really suffered the after, or the effects, and then the after effects of communism, and some of the cultural degradation, but there was still that element, that remnant, or whatever you might want to call it, of cultural traditionalism. And there's the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia has sprouted once again, and that's their it's I would probably say that there's, I don't know the numbers, but it's certainly not what it was pre-communism, let's say. But anyway, like it's a traditional nation. A lot of Russians are patriotic. I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see. We don't get any news this way where, what does the average Russian man on the street think about invading the Ukraine? But, I think what originally happened in the Ukraine was that Russia got its traditional base back, and which was, and then the whole area was, Russians, and that wanted to ally with Russians, or with Russia, rather than the government of Ukraine, which is a total nightmare in another story. And then in the Donbass region and so forth, the only areas they originally went into were people who I think in plebiscites they said, we want to be if we have the choice, we're going to go to Russia, not Ukraine. And there's a bunch of that stuff over there in Eastern Europe that's happening, and we don't get that angle of reporting, and there's so much stuff we don't know, and it's like, just put the blue and yellow flag in your profile and
right,
you're great. And going back to what you talked about earlier,
I want to show you something, because I think you're hitting on a thought process, and this is going to be a little shocking to people. So I because I don't think people understand this Russo-Ukrainian conflict and just exactly how much drum beating is going on. But to some people, this may not seem as severe to them as it was to me when I read it. But when I read this comment on Twitter,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know if can you see it? I've got
I have to lean in here.
I'll read it. This is a guy who claims he's a vet in the United States military. He says, Russian bots are actually pretty stupid, and this is a response to something that I said. The sanctions seems to have made them super desperate. I hope, just listen to this, people. I hope Ukraine bombs the Red Square. I hope to live to see the day internal terrorist attacks begin to rock the city centers of Moscow. This is an American.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the whole Russo-Ukrainian conflict goes, I have no dog in the fight.
Right. I don't care. I don't care about either side, honestly.
Other than I don't want the U.S. supporting either side, and we're
Right.
happen to be on the Ukrainian side. That's the only reason I'm semi against the Ukrainian side, is because I don't want our blood and treasure being sacrificed over there. And Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. decided that, oh yeah, we're going to start paying for Ukrainian pensions. What about like funding or paying off our debts in the United States first, before you start giving people that you have no common ground with, really, other than, well, yeah, we're against Russia. I mean, why are we against Russia? We should not be against Russia. Just
but Brian, Russia's evil. We've always been against the Russians. Always.
I don't know that.
We even fought Russia during World War II.
Yeah, we did.
We fought them. The Soviet Union was our enemy. I've had that conversation.
Unfortunately, they shouldn't have been, but they were. But we peacefully negotiated to purchase Alaska from them. That maybe That might have been the crowning
That was it
achievement
right
of
there. They're
Lincoln.
mad about Alaska.
Crowning achievement of Lincoln when Seward negotiated the purchase of Alaska from
Good old Seward's folly. Oh, the irony, I think the irony for people who are paying attention is that there are voices out there, especially like yours, and I have really appreciated, how do I want to say this? I've appreciated the fact that you come to these conversations that you have, with your audience, and clearly when you do a podcast, you're not just talking to yourself. You're having a conversation with people, even if they're not talking back. But you come to these conversations and you're having this very reasoned, intellectual interaction, and you're able to take a step back and say, look, here's a figure, and let's go back and look at, your comment on, Nixon's book, and what he had to say in there, and how taken aback you were to be reading this from a guy like Nixon, of course, who was, very frequently in people's minds as like the worst president in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
Just vilified. I mean, was he great? There were some things that he did really well. I think his handling of China was phenomenal. But he wasn't stellar either. But when you read those comments,
he was a total disaster.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I have a hard time finding anybody that's not been a disaster on the domestic front in a long time. But ever since, I don't know, it was like the 1860s, the domestic presidents have just not. I don't know. Anyway, when you look at the way people interact, there's this very binary, black and white. Either this president's all bad, or everything this president did was good. And there has to be an ability within us to take a step back, look at these people as individuals, and not see them as rulers, and therefore what they do must be right or all wrong, but say, okay, they're human beings. They're to use theological language, they're fallen, or they're broken, if to use a modern version. They're going to make bad decisions, and they might make some good decisions. But being able to assess what they're doing and what has been done throughout history, and be able to do that from a balanced perspective like you do, is not easy, because it is incredibly easy to fall into a narrative of, oh, this person's not on my side, therefore everything they're doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for me, one of the most eye-opening places was to take a step back and walk away from the perspective of like JFK being, okay, yes, he was assassinated, and that's sad, but overall he was bad for the country. When I look back then and actually engage with what JFK was fighting for, he was actually a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue on both sides of that. I mean, I grew up in a family where JFK was like, geez, like my grandparents lived in Boston, for a number of years. One of my grandfathers is from Boston, and a huge JFK fan, man of about the same age. And, this we got one of our own in, and I get it. It's the tribalism. And my dad was a huge fan because he got to go along on, the campaign when he came to Portland, and, because my grandparents were involved in the campaign, and he loved them. And then he was super into all this JFK assassination stuff that was in that basically really took hold in the 80s and early 90s, and kind of culminated with the JFK movie that, oh gosh, he loved that thing. But
see, I did it.
Oh, I mean, I'm, I
was being tongue in cheek. So.
I don't come down anywhere on it other than I hate it. I hate the talk about it. And there's too many books and too many theories, and there's just not enough information out there for anybody to make a rational decision, as far as I know. But the thing was, I was like in high school, I got JFK is probably the best president that ever was, because he's an Irishman and he's from Boston, and that's where my tradition, half of my tradition comes from. And so there we go.
Is it the last name? Is that what it is?
Huh?
Is it the last name? Is that O'Leary? Is that got something to do with it? I don't.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I mean Kennedy, O'Leary, they're Boston Irish, man, and so, but then I start reading more history, and I don't, like you said, he's probably a good guy, but he was up against it from the beginning. But the more I read about it, it's like I'm not even going to pass judgment on the guy. Like you said about other presidents, he did some good things and did some bad things. Ultimately, I think it was kind of a wash. But what his assassination did was brought in LBJ, who's like Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was one of the worst presidents of all time. No doubt about it. And he got us embroiled in Vietnam thick. Granted, Kennedy had put troops in there, or actually Eisenhower, I believe, did first, put troopers in there. But LBJ, the way he prosecuted that war was criminal. And anyway, Nixon gets a bad rap for it because he tried to end it by doing things that should end wars, but the destruction of humanity. I don't know. So there's a lot of things there.
Right, but there again, that goes to this cultural, philosophical perspective of America, which is this that it has very much, and I'll throw this all the way back to the Civil War. It's very much has to be this mentality of it's us versus them, and this pitting of one side against the other, and this inability for us to find common ground with somebody who may be on the other side of the aisle from us. And say, where can we work together for the furtherance and the betterance of our republic? And nobody wants to, I'm painting with a very broad brush, but by and large, most people don't want to do that. And you look at the Rage Against War Machine rally that was just held last Sunday, a week ago tomorrow, out in Washington, D.C., and how both sides of the aisle, both the left and the right, have come out and talked about these horrible people at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. And, in Rachel Maddow's comments about, these radical Russian, shills who were there, and it was only a few people, and there were several thousand people there, and they were from every walk of life.
Yeah.
They were from every political perspective, who were literally there saying, do not enmesh us in this war. Right. And the political machine wants to grind them out and spit them out. That's it. That's all they want, is they want us to remain divided.
Well, and I would say you mentioned the Civil War, and then and now in the kind of in the middle of all that, you had World War II, which probably was the most united the quote unquote United States have ever been since maybe, and I don't even know if I could count the Revolutionary War aftermath as part of that, but the United States as a polity and a people was probably the most united then during those years of World War II than they ever have before or after. And which is it's you look at that and you're like, it takes a war that maybe we shouldn't have even been in the first place. I mean, if you read Buchanan's Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War, you can, I would highly recommend that is to get a background. But again, you not to get into it, but too much, but you have this mythology of World War II. It's like we saved, we saved Jews from the Holocaust. It's like,
no, we didn't.
Well, we did. But that's not the impetus from going into war.
We had no idea it was even happening. Really, we'd heard rumors. We heard rumors, but we had no idea.
And the fact alone that we allied with the Soviet Union, or the United States government allied with the Soviet Union, a major blunder. I mean, Joseph Stalin, perhaps. I mean, this is a bold statement. I'm not coming out either way, but there's an argument that he was way worse for the world than Adolf Hitler.
As bad as Hitler was.
And Hitler is
horrible.
The most terrible guy in history, perhaps.
Stalin murdered more of
Yeah.
his own
He has
people.
a bigger body count, I guess,
Yeah, he
Stalin.
massively
Of his own people.
of his own people.
Yeah.
And
Uncle Joe, we called him.
yeah. And that's, but we can't, we're not able, and that's the thing, I think, and which is there again is, I think, the appeal of what I've heard listening to you has been, there's just a lack of critical thought. We have to, not you don't have a lack of critical thought. Well, but what you point out, when not even intentionally, but throughout your show, what I hear is here's this critical approach to history. Here's a critical approach to current events. And whatever the case might be, whatever it is you're talking about, here's this critical approach.
Mm-hmm.
Is how should we be responding to this? And I think that's the appeal of so much of what I hear in a lot of the listening that I do. I listen to a podcast that's definitely comes from the left, but their entire existence is a critical approach to QAnon. Definitely leftist, but I agree with so much of what they have to say as they approach the topic of the Q phenomenon. Now, everything to
I
them
don't know much
is
about that, to be honest. I know a couple friends are like either into it or
highly
totally
critical of
against
it.
or whatever.
I'm highly critical of it. So,
Yeah.
but
I
because I think it's
dove into it either way.
well, Michael Rechtenwald, who I've been in communication with to get him on to talk about it, because he loves to destroy it, calls it's the biggest honeypot in history. And it has all the earmarks of what the Soviets did in the early days of their work, which was to plant misinformation about a rise up of the people, the populace, to overthrow the shackles of the wicked communist Bolshevism of the Soviet Union. And they did that intentionally. Their propaganda machine, their intelligence machine,
propaganda on the other end, on the other side.
They planted this anti-Soviet information
in order to get a reaction that was 2x or 10x the other way.
Yeah, that sucked these anti-Bolshevik people in, and then they used it to discredit them, or arrest them, or placate them into thinking that some rescue was coming for them. Which, and so I'm listening to these QAnon, this QAnon Anonymous podcast, and going, we could have a debate philosophically about your leftism all day long, but we agree on this, and that's what's missing in critical thought in politics today. And look at the Trump wing of the populist movement right now. You have to be, if you're not for Trump, you are for Biden in their mind.
Right.
And you cannot critique anything that Trump did. And any critique of Trump at all is met with, well, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. You point out that Trump is the one who really empowered people like Gavin Newsom and Commissar Timothy Walz of the People's State of Marxisota to do what they did with lockdowns. And they're like, no, that wasn't Trump's fault. But it was the declaration of a national emergency that opened the door for all of these governors to just go hog wild. They were waiting for that. You point that out, and it's like, well, he didn't have a choice. There's no ability for people to disengage from their loyalty and say, what's reasonable here?
I have a lot of thoughts on the whole Trump thing. But
well, you're a Buchananite, so I can't imagine why.
No, I mean, I like the rhetoric in a lot of it anyway, in the campaign. And even when he was president, he didn't do any of it hardly. He promised a lot of things. And ultimately a disappointment. I thought a lot of, even though I voted for Pat Buchanan in 2000, and I thought ultimately, especially like you mentioned 9/11, And after that, maybe other than World War II, probably the most united the country had been, and George W. Bush was president, and he had all these things that, I thought he was now on the right track after running a campaign that I didn't necessarily agree with, but I certainly liked him better than Albert Gore. But
you used his full name. He's in trouble.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, it's a president. He's going into his second term. He's got all this political capital that he can do. And he just got worse. He got so bad in those next 4 years. And I'm like, oh man, I put a lot of faith in this guy that he'd do the right thing. And then, I got, quickly disabused of that hope.
Well, he paved the way for
hope and change.
Right. Because he paved the way for a at best a centrist war hawk, who was going to only continue, and actually, in my opinion, would have made the conflict that we were in for the last 20 some years worse. If McCain had gotten in, we would have bombed everybody.
Oh yeah.
Everybody. That man could, you cannot find a place that John McCain didn't want to blow up.
One of the first places my name was relatively public was in the local newspaper in Portland, Oregon, called the Oregonian. And I used to submit letters or op-eds and stuff. And I think they got tired of me, or maybe their policies, they only take so many of them. But the first one was in the lead up to the 2008 election. And I basically trashed both candidates, but I said, McCain's better on taxes and judges. And, that's probably the choice. And if that is what the choice is, it's terrible. And we saw the same thing with Trump. Trump was good, if not great, on judges, but pretty much everything else, like, you can just leave it, because a lot of the stuff made it worse. But I can't remember who I was talking to, was saying like a mannequin might have got more votes against Hillary Clinton than Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, that's not untrue. Like, talk about a polarizing character for a presidential candidate.
She's hated. I loathe her. I loathe her existence.
Yeah,
and her husband, like, I is slightly below her on my loathing scale, but like, she's terrible and an evil person.
Oh,
no doubt about it.
Adam says that was him that said that a mannequin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We had it will probably come out in a few weeks if that was the case. If it was Adam. Yeah.
Don't you hate that when you've had a conversation with somebody and they say something that's really profound and then you can't remember who the heck it was that said it?
Yeah. I recorded several podcasts yesterday. None of them were released because I didn't have had a few other things going on in the afternoon when I normally would sit down and do my own. And, ultimately I said, well, yeah, we got long form tomorrow, so join in. And it was a little late notice for a lot of people, but hopefully we can spread the word.
Well, then the great thing is that, they can always watch, and they can apologize for not watching live by hitting the super thank you when they watch on the replay. So there we
Great
go.
Idea.
I cannot promise that Brian will benefit at all from any super thank you that I get, but
but just subscribe to my Substack there.
Yes, that was
free at briandoleary.substack.com, and
you're really good at
it's just briandoleary.com.
You're really good at shilling for yourself. You've been almost like you've been doing this.
Not really. So
you are probably fall closer to the paleo conservative side of things. You're a Buchananite. You have a lot, voted for him in 2020. You start your show, you start out by doing a sports podcast. It kind of shifts to cultural commentary, social commentary, political commentary, and now you've got
still some sports.
Still some sport, right? And which you must be handling well, because I still listen.
Yeah.
So, like, the closest to sports I get is we have about 30 miles away. We got a semi-pro NAHL hockey team that I
Mhm.
love to watch, but I only go with my daughter, and now she's got daughters of her own, and
Mhm.
I'm an old man, and she's not ready to drag her soon to be 3-year-old out to hockey games yet, but we'll get her there. Thanks for stopping by, Adam. If you're on Twitter, find me. Anyway, you're now you're kind of branching off, and you're doing a lot of post-production stuff, and you're doing a lot of help, and wanting to help others who want to do this. And so tell me, and I won't keep you too much longer, but tell me a little bit about what your goal is now going forward. You're more of your
Yeah, I mean, I got
podcasting business side. What do you got going on there?
well, I mentioned earlier the Tom Woods School of Life, and we have these entrepreneurship groups because I mean, essentially, Tom's goal was to kind of get a bunch of people together of like mind, and give them a way out of the cultural morass or whatever you might want to call it that we're dark. And then so there's a lot of people who've kind of are in similar positions as me, or maybe you or other folks who are just like, I'm so sick of all these people that I have to deal with on a daily basis and going to my my job and whatever. So there's a lot of people doing side hustles, and I got like side hustle on top of side hustle trying to make things go. But so you get these in these groups, and like people are doing all sorts of great things. It's pretty amazing. And so I'm like, well, there's people that want a podcast and people that just talk to me, and they want to know how to start or whatever. And it's like, well, I might as well just, I mean, lack of better terms, be a coach for them.
Right.
And so we've had, I'm working on just right now, just only a couple with a couple folks, but we're going from, what's your idea? How do you get, what microphone do you use? What, software do you use? And then that's a whole discussion in and of itself. But then how do you edit, or do you want to just pay somebody to edit your stuff? How are you going to monetize it, type thing? Or how are you going to try and monetize it? Because monetizing is, as you probably well know, it's like not just, okay, I'm going to monetize it, here we go, snap your fingers, and you get money flowing at you. That's not the case. So my focus just in podcasting is to put out product, put out content, and right. And that's the first thing. Now, big, the bigger you're following, obviously, the more money just kind of rains down on you. Podcasting is harder than like terrestrial radio or whatever. But anyway, so I set up a business called O'Leary Digital. And I just kind of put all my podcasts under that umbrella, and say anybody that wants to, you don't have to brand it that way, but if you want to come in, if you want to talk, I got a half hour I put a link, we can just talk for a half hour about where you're at, and then see if I can help you. Cause I guess the impetus for this was I didn't ever see myself as being that guy, because 3 years ago, I had no clue. But I've done all this myself, and with a little bit of help from my old co-host on my sports podcast, Tim, who took he took a lot of the load as far as editing and that stuff goes. But after he couldn't do it anymore, which I don't blame him, and I kind of wish I stopped, but I didn't. And
here you are.
Here I am, and
on a Saturday morning.
And so I learned a lot of the stuff myself, and I'm constantly learning how to do all that stuff. And like
there's a big learning curve on this too.
Huge. And it's not. Yeah. Okay. What I tell people, if they want to start a podcast, just start. That's the most important thing. 2, get yourself a microphone. 3, you probably need a computer. And after that, you can do a podcast if you have that, or a way to record the voice coming out of your microphone. You can do it on a voice recorder, whatever. Then you can. There's all sorts of options. Whether you send the audio file somehow to another person, but all you really need to get started is a microphone and like something legitimately to talk about. Whether it's whatever you think about that day, or if you have a theme. I think it's easier to have a theme. That's why I'm pretty excited about this show that I'm doing with Adam here that'll come out in a month or so. But because we actually have like a outline, or not an outline. Each show might have an outline, but we have like we just have a particular scope of what we want to talk about. And on my daily show, I talk about kind of whatever I want. And you mentioned stuff about like I do like sports and politics, history. And one of my kind of oddly favorite things that I did was like for a week, I think earlier in the fall, I read an article in a magazine I subscribed to, one of, I think only one, maybe two magazines that I've subscribed to, called Chronicles. It's edited by Paul Gottfried. And on the cover,
you're one of the surviving subscribers.
Yeah. Did you listen to Tom Wood's podcast yesterday?
I did catch it. Yeah.
Yeah. He said they went like in the 80s, they had 30,000 subscribers or something.
They're down to like 5 or 10.
5,000, sell about 10,000 copies a month.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm one of the 5,000, I guess. And
you still get a hard copy of it?
I still get the hard copy. Yeah. And
I haven't seen a hard copy magazine delivered to anybody in so long.
Yeah.
Doctors' offices, and they still got like 1970 editions of highlights.
Right. And so I was reading a few months back, the cover story had an essay by, oh gosh, I think it was Stanley Payne, who's a historian, University of Wisconsin, and he is probably the foremost historian, at least in today's world, on Spain and the Spanish Civil War era and stuff. But it also had a cover story. The other cover story was the Confederate monument in Richmond, Virginia. Oh shoot, forget the guy's name. But Brian, I don't know if you guys listen to Brian McClanahan show. He actually talked about it.
Was that Bedford Forest?
No, it's just a Confederate. They're trying to tear down all these statues. And
oh no, that's the one of just like kind of this generic Confederate soldier.
Yeah.
And they were trying to even tear that down. Yeah,
they're trying to tear it down, and the whole thing around that. And anyway, so I talked about that a little bit, but then the other thing was an article by, I think it was Stanley Payne, but they had an article about the Spanish Civil War, and then it's a subject that is, I didn't know much about it until about 10, 12 years ago. And I really dove into it quite deeply. And so for about 4.5 of those episodes that week, I just discussed what I knew about the Spanish Civil War. And again, like you mentioned earlier, like I come at it from a point of view that, you probably think, Franco is equivalent to Hitler, and, Spain was on the side of the Nazis. And, he was against democracy. It's like the common myth of history has got it all wrong. I mean, he's, some of it might be true. Well, anyway, you can go back in the archives and listen to those shows. They're about a half hour a piece or so. So, but I think I come at it at an interesting perspective. I'm no means like a scholar. Well, I'm an amateur scholar, but I've read a lot of the material and stuff on it. So other than most people I know, most people don't know anything about it.
Do you think that Americans tend to shy away from studying a lot of things in history for fear that they're not going to be able to defend a position that they've held for a long time if they run across data that or writing that challenges their perceived or even like indoctrinated positions?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I've not really thought about it a whole lot, but I would say that probably most of the how should I say it? Well, lack of better terms, the educational system, particularly the government schools, there's only a limited amount of stuff within their scope that they teach for quote unquote history. So really, if you want to delve into history more, you have to do it on your own,
Right.
or be in college and go into a specific field. I mean, for me in college, it was primarily American history, and that's what my specialization in history. I wouldn't even say I came out of it with any profound way of thinking, other than some of the other classes I took were Irish history, and that kind of blew me away. But
You learned some things about your people.
yeah, and where we came from and all that stuff. But other than that, like just general American history stuff, we can. I don't know. It's just one of those deals that I just think curious minds will start reading stuff, and if you don't read, like a lot of people maybe don't even want to go down that road, like you said, because their mind is going to be changed. They just I think a lot of people just want to read more of the information that supports whatever their mythology is in the first place.
It's like people's news choices. They
totally
they pick Fox News because they know that, maybe once in a while Tucker Carlson, or if they happen to catch something from Gutfeld, or maybe they flip over to Fox Business and they catch a little bit from Kennedy, they might get a little bit of a pushback on some of the things they've always held to, but Fox is safe. Same thing for people who tune in to MSNBC, all 10 of them. And the people who tune into CNN or anything else, they tune into those because those are safe for them. And it's the same mentality of, even their reading, or whether they're doing their reading through audiobook or actually picking up a hard copy of something, or even their choice of listening to podcasts. They pick somebody that they know is safe. And, it's why people are going back and listening to old archives of Rush Limbaugh now, because Rush is safe, and he's going to say things that he said throughout the entire history of his show that I really, I liked. But boy, you point him to somebody like Tom Woods or something else, and they're like, well, that Tom Woods guy seems to have a positive perspective on, national divorce, and we can't have that, or whatever the case might be. And it's a very,
as Tom says, it's off the 3x5 card of
allowable opinions. Yeah. And so we cloister ourselves, and I think that's been calculated. I have a very dim view of human nature. Theologically, probably is where my problem lies on that one, but I have a very dim view of human nature, in the sense of, I actually believe that there is a lot of calculation on the part of evil people to control the masses, and a very dim view of people's ability to realize when they're being controlled. And so I see this and I go, yeah, this is what they're doing. They're trying to control, and people are falling for it. It's on a small scale. It's happened here in Minnesota just this last week. They started the fear porn on this winter weather event that was going to just absolutely shut down the entire state of Minnesota.
Winter weather in Minnesota must be severe.
Well, it's, for my Minnesota fan base that's watching, they know it was just like warnings, don't leave your house.
One of my cousins went to grad school at University of Minnesota, and he said, like, oftentimes there were several days where they got such a good system there that he didn't even have to go outside. because there's like the tunnel system or whatever. Like you could
Mhm.
just kind of work through, like, and never be outside in the -20 or whatever it might have
We
been.
have an entire network in downtown Rochester they call the subway and skyway system
Mm-hmm.
because of the Mayo Clinic that
Mm.
ensures that if you can get into a hotel in downtown Rochester because you're visiting the Mayo Clinic, you never have to go outside.
Mm.
You can travel
Yeah.
everywhere. But Minnesotans, like native Minnesotans, people who live here and used to it, like we're being told this is like stay off the roads, travel will be dangerous if not deadly. And
Well,
people were like going to Aldi and in Target and Walmart, and I'm like, people, it's like, why do you need 3 weeks worth of toilet paper and potato chips?
yeah.
It's
Well,
just
it's the
a
same thing
winter
happened
storm.
with the Rona 19 stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
stay home, stay home. It's like, what do you like?
But they
You're
fell for it.
yeah, you're trying to eliminate my humanity immediately, and like yeah, you go to I went to the grocery store a couple times, and or quite often actually, because like but even before the Rona, we would get groceries delivered. It's like people used to do that all the time, and now like Amazon and Whole Foods and Safeway and Costco, they all do it, and for a nominal charge, if not no charge.
Yeah, depending on where you are in relation to their
So it's like, you
location.
got 5 kids, and like you can't just go to the store and shop. Like we know what we need.
Is that's the Roman Catholic side right there? 5 kids.
We know what we need and what we want, and just like bring it to us, drop it at our front door, and we'll see you later. And but occasionally we needed something, and I'd go to the store, and like I remember one of those days, man, everything was just wiped out. There was like literally no bread. There were like maybe one pack of like non-bread, NAN Indian type flatbread.
Indian non-bread. Yeah, absolutely.
There was no chicken. It's all gone. No, not a single piece of chicken anywhere. There was, relatively little meat of any sort. It was just like the whole store looked like it had been ransacked by looters, but people had just been coming in there getting all that stuff. And oh yeah, no spaghetti, no pasta. There was tons of
Right.
pasta sauce, but no like pasta, which is
Pasta, right.
not even like on a nutritional level. Like that's filler for the most part. Pasta. The sauce is like the good part of the pasta, in my opinion, anyway.
Maybe they're making. Come on, Brian. Maybe they were making their own sauce.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, with all the tomatoes that grow in March. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, you got all this stuff where you stay home, and
I'm gonna give you an example of what you're talking about here, and we'll get ready to wrap up. This was yesterday. Can you see it?
Holy cow. Yeah, that was similar. I took a similar picture like 3 years ago.
Aldi.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was yesterday in Aldi. It in the signs on the front of the store were like, please be patient. We are experiencing shortages due to transportation related to the weather. And that sign has been on the door since before winter.
Yeah, I would go to Costco, and they would say like you were limited to one package of toilet paper or one package of paper towels. And it's like, and one package of bottled water. And sometimes they never had that stuff.
Right. And we're seeing that most of the stores in our area are doing the same thing with eggs now. Like eggs
with eggs, like $9 a dozen average.
Oh, they were not quite as bad as you guys, but for our area, we're high.
It was like nationwide. There's like one place in Connecticut. I don't know if it has anything to do with the worldwide egg price or nationwide egg price, but there's like a huge like elimination of a bunch of these egg laying hens. And
it has something to do with this avian bird flu thing, and they're destroying. Yeah, well, we can. That would be an entire different show. So when do you guys think you're going to launch your first episode of the new show? And
we're aiming late March, early April. We just want to.
you're going to get a lot of them in the can then.
Yeah, our idea is to kind of batch release our first several, so that people can just maybe binge at first and then catch up with us as we go.
Oh, you're going to do that to us, are you?
Well, what we do have, part of the reason we're doing it this way is the first few shows are going to be like this meta concept of how do you start a podcast? We just had this idea. We kind of like talked online one day and we're like, I think we could do, like, you think a lot of the same things as I do, and you differ a lot in some of the things that I differ in. And I think we'd probably do like a pretty good podcast. So what do we want to do a podcast about? So it went from idea to, and then we recorded a couple shows we didn't even have a name for it. So then we talk about like how we derived a name, artwork, music, and all this, and a little bit on how you actually do the recording. We decided that, we wanted to do this whole series of how to do a podcast, but we realized that I think the story is us, how we decided, is a lot more interesting than, the whole, like, how to do a podcast via audio, like
Right.
me telling you and you listening to your earbuds. It's a little odd. So we're gonna,
Here, let me tell you how to do what I'm doing right now.
yeah, we're gonna kind of trim that down, and that's part of one of the reasons that.
Are you guys going to be bringing on diverse voices, you think? Or
eventually, yeah. Eventually, we want to get our feet underneath us and get a few episodes. And whether we batch release, like, original plan was like a dozen, but I think it's going to be more like 6 or 8 that we ultimately release, and then kind of trickle them out as we go. And then hopefully we can get some guests. So like I said, these shows they're right now planned to be about an hour, or about a half hour. And then if we get a guest on, like, we've been going for over 2 hours probably.
I told you I wanted a long form because I just find your content fascinating, and your story behind it is fascinating to me.
But yeah, so
I just do this so I can have somebody to talk to. I don't have any friends.
Yeah, we'll probably go for an hour or more if we have a guest, because I think people like that. And, I don't know, we haven't decided on like the live streaming or whatever. I kind of consider myself, personally, a podcaster as opposed to a broadcaster, a YouTuber, because that's kind of how I started doing it. And I can, if I have a long pause, if I have nothing to think about, I can just trim that out, and you didn't know. And I get my,
you didn't get to hear me freeze.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're like me, I grew up hearing about having a face for radio. So
yeah. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I maybe entertained the thought at one point of wanting to be on radio, but I'm like, what?
You got a radio voice. If that
how do
helps.
you do that? And oh yeah,
you do. You got a radio voice, so you can tell you've been podcasting for a while because you've got the whole radio. And do you talk to your kids with your podcast voice?
I don't know. Maybe it's a different affectation once the mic's in front of me. I'm not sure. But I was like, how do you get on? Like, that seems like a little complicated. And then
then you gotta shill for products you don't necessarily like. And
I told some people, like, I'm actually in another like podcasting group. It's actually within the Tom Wood School of Life. So we get about, anyway, like from 6, 8, 10 people once a week to come in and just talk about their podcast. Cause you mentioned earlier, I actually wrote this down, like the kind of the protectionism for the podcasts that you were saying. And this group's great, because I was kind of hesitant, because I don't know, like, if people want to share their secrets, but there's no freaking secrets. Like,
you sit down and you talk.
Yeah, you sit down and you talk, and you want people to articulate ideas better. And I guess going back to like what I'm trying to do with my podcast coaching consulting stuff, that's what I want to do. Cause, granted, I don't expect everybody to listen to my show every time it comes out. I only do that with a few podcasts, and I'm finding the more and more podcasts I listen to, that's really hard to do for even the ones I really love. But
You saw my list.
yeah, I saw your list. That's
It's a good thing I work an 8 hour. It's a good thing I work an 8 hour day and I can put earbuds in and just
Yeah.
and just listen, because the other half would get really mad if I just came home and sat on my butt and did nothing. Wait, I already do that. So.
Yeah. So I was, I guess that with this thing about, protect, we want people to share their ideas and articulate ideas in a way that they can get them out cleanly, forcefully, if that's what you want, and just kind of go from there.
I talked to a guy a couple of years ago. He's a great videographer, but he was just getting all bent out of shape because people would call him and ask him for ideas, and he was like, well, I'm not telling them everything that I do because I don't want people taking my ideas. I'm like, if you think that every idea that TC has when he's talking to people or even doing a stream on his own is completely just his idea, then you have spent no time at all studying humanity, because if you think you have an original idea, you're probably in need of some psychological help. So.
As far as like podcasting goes and like the production of a podcast, most of my learning has been from YouTube, from people that give it to for free. Now I say, if I were to go back and do it again, a lot of things, I would have just paid somebody $500 or $1,000 or whatever it might have been, just to hold my hand through the whole thing. And then here you go. Here's all you need. And you're not going to nickel and dime yourself with spending all this stuff on all these different things over the course of time. Because I used to be in specialty retail. And the one thing I told my customers is like, just buy this one, product. We were in, I was in fly fishing. So like, say for instance, waders, buy the $400 waders. Don't buy the $100 waders. You're going to buy the $100 waders 5 times before that $400 pair is, and then ultimately you're worse off. And but in the meantime, you got better comfort, better everything with at the beginning.
Or you could just do what TC does when he goes trout fishing. He just puts on his old BDUs and wades right into the creek and walks right by all the guys that come down from the Twin Cities in their Gucci waders.
There you go. Yeah, we do a lot of trout fishing and steelhead fishing and stuff in the winter time, and so that's nearly impossible unless you want to die immediately from hypothermia. So
that's like our summer streams then.
Yeah.
Well, all of our streams are all spring fed, so
yeah, cool.
There's a lot of shrinkage.
Yeah. Yep.
So give me a brief just a couple of paragraphs on why do conversations matter in our day and time when it comes to diverse political and social positions, and then the next big thing that you see coming politically and socially for us, and then we'll say adios.
Well, conversations that matter. It's my tagline for the O'Leary Review podcast, my kind of long form interview podcast that we have. And it's funny because one of my now friends, online friends, and fellow I had on my podcast, and he's done some consulting with me. I've been on his podcast. His name's Nick Picone, nickpicone.com. You can go there, but he was like, I think that serious content amidst a serious culture is a little hardcore for when you want to talk with people, just kind of like talk with them. So that's why one of the other reasons I started my daily show, because that's me talking. Now I want to have I think this is kind of a conversation that matters, like whatever it is. Like we're talking about things that matter, but they are serious. But it's a tagline and it's a marketing thing, but I think it's true. that you need to have conversations that matter, because just fluff conversations don't get you anywhere in life.
Right.
Like going to a cocktail party and, chatting about whatever, like it, and it's like you're wasting time. And
Right.
not that I don't mind wasting time every once in a while by any
Right.
means, but if you want to get somewhere, and if you ask me my opinion in a certain setting, I'll give it to you. And I find that podcasting is a very good setting for me to be able to do it. And I've kind of realized that. You also asked about what our next biggest...
What do you think is socio-culturally and socio-politically, what do you think the next big thing for us to be watching out might be?
Next big thing. Holy cow.
I'm not asking for like, this is definitely going to happen type prediction, but
No.
I mean, you clearly have your finger on the pulse of the socio-political world. Yeah, you can downplay it, but I can hear it in your daily show and in your other content. You've got your finger on the pulse. And you can't be a Buchananite not.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm really concerned about is World War III starting in Eastern Europe and on the Russia-Ukrainian border. I'm really concerned about that. It doesn't, I don't think about it all hours of the day. I probably think about it most every day. I'm scared. Right. I don't know how to do anything about it because, we're one man, one vote in this polity, and
allegedly
allegedly. And that vote doesn't do me anything here where I live because of any number of reasons. One, that it certainly doesn't matter. But I don't know. I think that Joe Biden should be impeached immediately. He's not going to be. There's not enough political will in this country to do that. Impeached and convicted, not the show trial that Donald Trump went through a couple times.
I'll defend Trump. What they did to him was just absolutely ludicrous. It was asinine.
Oh yeah.
Asinine. So there.
Yeah. and then, but say, for instance, you get a Donald Trump coming in for another term after the next election. I can't see that happening right now, but just say for sake of argument that happens. I think that the one thing that I think is the biggest threat, what I just said about the specter of World War III, that goes down quite a bit with Trump. For whatever reason. I mean, he's bombastic and he's kind of a doofus, but he's able to like allay a lot of that. I mean, we were kind of like at the end of Obama's term, and if there were to be a Hillary Clinton presidency, I think we would have seen war over there much sooner. I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but that's just kind of my impression of the whole thing. But, you get a run of the mill. I don't know who the other Republican would be. It sounds like DeSantis is probably not going to throw his hat in the ring unless he does it really late. If Trump fumbles a ball, Nikki Haley, she'd be just as bad as Biden. This Vivek guy that popped up the other day, he has some good things to say, but he's not. I just can't take him seriously. And, I think the more candidates you get in the race, and just like last time, I think that Trump, just by force of personality, emerges out of the pack. And I predicted Trump to be the president before they, I think it was like December of 2015. I gave
before the primaries.
Oh yeah, before that, a lot of people were even running, and they're like, "Oh no, Trump!" Like now, and I was like, I put $50 down with somebody, and I just said, I'll pay you $50 if Trump is not the president, and you didn't have to pay me 50 the other way, and that was a stupid bet, but I was so confident in that. Because the way I saw things going, not that I necessarily agreed with it, but like I was a Rand Paul supporter, for crying out loud, and he just got whooped up in the primaries, and he got beaten by his neighbor, and that didn't help. But I mean, I was a huge Ron Paul supporter in 2008 and 12, and I
Do you not do you? I appreciate you saying what you're being honest about the things that you see and that kind of have you a little worried or afraid or whatever. I think that's what I was looking for was, where's your mind at on those things? When you guys are ready to launch the new show, put a promo clip together and send it my way. I'll run it.
Sure.
I'd
Yeah,
love to push it over there. And if you guys ever need anything, or like I said, promotional or whatever, you let me know and I'll definitely push it out. And
you bet.
I really appreciate the time. I love your content. I just
Thank you.
That you sucked me in. You had me at hello.
So so let me turn the tables real quick and ask you, like, so I got asked.
Hey, this is my show.
I got asked on my own podcast by a guest, like, how did you find me, or how did you find like this other show that associated with? How did you find? And it's like, I don't really remember. I don't know, but once I started, I can't stop, kind of thing. And that was my now friend Andy Flattery, who hosts a Reformed Financial Advisor podcast, which is it's another
reformed, like
not like you, like reformed.
He's not like you at all. It's, and there's a lot of people that have said no one's like you, TC.
No, not reformed in that he thinks of financial advising in a much different manner than the traditional ways of doing
Awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, I interrupted your thought. You were going to ask me what?
Oh yeah. So how did you come across my stuff, and how did you decide that this is going to be something I listen to every day? Because I'm
well, no,
I don't get much feedback, so I'm
no,
just,
it was. Well, trust me,
people are like, go get them, pal, and that's about the feedback I get.
It was because of we connected because of the
that's right.
John stuff, Ziegler stuff, and I just saw that you had a show, and I just started paying attention, and next thing I know, we're interacting, and I think the thing that really ignited our conversation was you had kind of chimed in when I had talked about Lincoln, and and I was like, all right, this guy not safe, but this guy might be somebody be interesting to talk to, because I mean, I've said some stuff about the Civil War and Lincoln and the dangers of the Civil War, and what I believe ultimately set up the fall. I mean, we are no longer a Jeffersonian style republic, and ironically, that came at the hands of a Republican. And
I don't know how ironic it is. The Republican Party was brand new with Lincoln, and
right.
It's I mean, there's a whole another 2-hour show we can get into,
right.
but
but then when you think about it, when you talk to the Republicans, they hail that the party of Lincoln, and I'm like, I don't know if you really is that you really want you want to be the party of Lincoln, so you'd be all right with just marching into Virginia and arresting their entire legislature.
Yeah, I mean,
like have you thought this through?
There's a whole another 2.5 hour show with that, but I would probably point people to if you want to know a lot, go look at Tom DiLorenzo's stuff on Abraham Lincoln and the real Lincoln, Lincoln Unmasked.
Listen to Dangerous History. That's another one that'll. I mean, not just on Lincoln, but they just talk about a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I'm like, anybody who takes and I heard Ziegler on Woods.
Yep.
And
he was on a few months ago. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this. And like, wow, I gotta get this guy on to talk about a story. And coming up here in the next week or so, I have I have the fake
Well-
accuser coming on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
AJ?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quite a guy.
Yeah.
I would
I'd
say,
like to get a hold of Liz, but I
yeah,
think
I would also say that John Ziegler's podcast, The Death of
death
Journalism,
of journalism.
comes
Yeah,
out twice a week, and it's it sometimes it goes as long as we've gone, not quite, but
no, he has some like 3-hour episodes.
yeah, but it's him talking, and he knows his stuff, and he's got
Mm.
points of view, and that's I would also say, like any budding podcaster, because John, he comes from broadcasting
Mhm.
and AM radio, and so he's good that way and thinking on his feet, but he's got everything. He, like, whether you agree with him or not, he's got the receipts, and you can
He's got the cash,
disagree, you can disagree with his conclusions, but you can't disagree with his like the core of his arguments on things, which is what makes an interesting and compelling podcast. So I would suggest that any budding podcasters out there, and I think you even listed them in your,
Yeah. I listed names for most of them just because
that's the show to listen to.
Yeah, the Death of Journalism is probably by far one of the best podcasts that are out there right now.
And again, it doesn't. We need to pump that up because,
Yeah.
like, he is persona non grata in the corporate media world.
Oh yeah, he has face cancellation from a different type of perspective.
Yeah,
And,
a lot of different perspectives. Yeah,
but I mean, the guy was arrested simply for showing up to a alleged speech, and I mean, as a journalist. And we've seen that again recently with another journalist in East Palestine, Ohio, who got arrested for just showing up to an event. And I mean, charges were all dropped, but I mean, that when you start to see journalists, whether they be with major networks or independent journalists, getting harassed and run off by law enforcement at the behest of the powers that be, we have a problem. And that's why journalism is really Death of Journalism is such a good show, because
I think what we're doing here, I think the podcast medium is the way serious people can get serious content. And I mean, not to hog my own idea, but like that's the way things are going to go. Independent media, independent newsletters, blogs. Blogging's kind of going away, but I think podcasting.
Who reads anymore?
YouTube, yeah, no kidding. But podcasting, videos, like I said, newsletters,
Right.
but people, and then you gotta do what you do, which is cultivate and curate your list every so often. And if the one person goes off the rail, or a new person comes in that is like, man, we gotta really back this train, do that. Because I mean, I used to have this huge list of podcasts that I would try and get through every day, because I told you I was in the early days of podcasting anyway, as a taxi cab driver. And what you said about working 8 hours and with earbuds in, I work 12 hours with my earbuds in, for the most part. So I got through a lot of podcasts and audiobooks, but there weren't as many podcasts out there.
Right.
And so I got steeped on the good ones that I really enjoyed. So I would just say, a word of advice for folks to curate your content, with something in mind, that where you want to get to with that.
Right.
And don't just listen to filler stuff.
Right.
That's for the nighttime and watching TV or whatever.
Well, and don't be afraid to listen to people that are going to push the envelope as far as where you're at in your own views. I mean, like, if you would have asked me 5 years ago to listen to Tom Woods and talk about secession or nullification, or even 6-7 years ago, really challenged me on something about like Lincoln and the morality of the North versus the South in the Civil War, I would have been like, no way. And anytime we do that, it's a detriment to our own intellect and our own position. And
yeah,
challenges make us grow.
I was talking with a guy the other day, and like we were talking offline, and he was saying, that you know, a younger fella, and he was saying, they say history is written by the victors, and I said, yeah,
Mhm.
it is to some degree, and he said, but I think they lie. I know they lie.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah,
Bingo. Yeah.
yeah, they do.
It's so funny. I just had that conversation with my buddy KD the other day. I'm like,
So you don't know what you're getting into, and I'm a guy who likes to. I don't get as much time to read as much, so a lot of my form of like getting stuff is audiobooks and podcasts, just because I'm on the move a lot, and sitting down and reading a book is like I can.
well, you have 5 kids.
I have to do it every once in a while, but if I just go into the living room, sit down on my recliner and open a hardback book, I get maybe a page through it. I have to sit in my little office here and
In the garage.
Yeah, in the garage. And
I like your man cave better than most of the man caves I see. So, well, I really appreciate your time, and
Thanks, TC.
it's Saturday.
Maybe do it again sometime. Yeah, or
Oh
maybe
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
on the O'Leary Review podcast, that Conversations That Matter, one of these days.
Oh, you just let me know.
Yeah,
it'll have to. It won't be. I won't be able to do it. I don't know when you normally do your recordings, but
we adjust. As I say, we adjust.
Yeah. Anytime you just shoot me a message, and I'll be. I could tell people my story.
Right. I'm interested. So
you wait till you hear.
Really turn the tables on you.
Yeah. Go ahead, attack me, bro. No, I appreciate your time, and
you bet.
I hope people will stop and listen, and not
Brian,
just to this.
BrianTO'Leary.com is where you is like the clearinghouse where I have for all my stuff, and
I do believe the link's in the description.
Yeah, and I like last thing there, like I just, people call me like online, maybe call me Brian D. O'Leary, but just call me Brian O'Leary. It's fine, because it's a relatively common name, and there was a guy who was famously an astronaut, also named Brian O'Leary. He never made it to space. He kind of had thought that maybe the space landing was maybe not really on
the moon the astronaut that believes the moon landing may or may not have been real.
Yeah, and I think toward the end of his life, he either recanted it or was forced to recant it. But I'm not that guy. So, and I'm much younger than him, and that just happens to be my middle initial. And BrianO'Leary.com was taken. So,
it's always funny the backstory behind why people pick what they pick. So. Yeah. Well, you go enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll close this up so that you can get. I just want to know: is it a full suit, or are you just wearing shorts underneath your?
No, it's just a sport coat.
All right.
Nice.
You did it up. I'm not used to that kind of appearance.
Yeah, it's kind of my.
Is that your shtick?
Serious content, man. With
right,
it's an unserious culture. So, like, I figure, like, if I dress better, people take me more seriously. I don't know how serious I am, but you fake it.
Like I said, I don't get people in suits on my show very often. I've had people show up with some pretty.
I thought about doing a suit this morning, but I was like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't get people in sports jackets. There, is that better? You look like you're on your way to go do some color commentary at the
hopefully, that's one of my goals.
The PGA
play-by-play is one of actually my goals, but I don't know how I'm going to crack into sports broadcasting the way sports are these days, whether they'll let me in or
if you even want to.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, that's been one of my things I've thought about until I started doing this and getting a microphone on my own. I never even knew how I could do that, but maybe one of these days I can be,
You could just show up at a local Little League game and say you want to broadcast the game for people. Next thing you know, you got a big following.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you for your time.
All right, you bet. Take care. Thanks, TC.
Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in on a Saturday morning. I don't do these very often, but I think the last Saturday show that I did was Monica Perez a few months ago, and that was a great show. She she even took the audio and put it up on her channel. That was cool for a Saturday show, which you never know what you're going to get on a Saturday show with me, if I'm even going to be awake. But we did it and we got it done. But I would strongly encourage you guys to head over and check out Brian's content. He's got some good stuff, and when he's ready to launch the new show and get it out there, we will be pushing that out there, because the more people we have talking about this stuff, the better off we all are. Do not be afraid of conversations that challenge you. If you shy away from the challenging, difficult conversations, you're not doing yourself any favors. And listening to voices that might talk about things that you've never thought about before, it's even better for you than keeping yourself surrounded in an echo chamber of opinions. If everybody around you agrees with you, they're either lying to you or you've surrounded yourself with people who don't do any independent thinking. They're not doing any free thought. And that's always dangerous. That's how we end up with the divided nation. And do not dismiss the idea of a peaceful national divorce, folks. Because as Brian said, we've already had a national divorce of ideology and of the heart. Do you really want to continue to align yourself with people that hate you because of what you look like and your thoughts? Ask yourself that question going forward. So my friends, until next time, do yourself a favor. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. Fight for your liberty. It is yours. And until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.